because I know when I was a kid and I read books, I didn't know whether the authors were alive or dead necessarily. I didn't know whether they were young or old. Sometimes I'd read a book and I had no idea whether it was from 20 years ago or 30 years ago or had just come out. And the difference between now and then is just so huge. I mean, when you have your countdown widget telling you it is 5 days and 17 seconds till Mockingjay comes out, that makes your emotional connection to books very different. It means that you see the book as a series is an ongoing process. It's something you're waiting for. It's something you're expecting. It's something you're anticipating and complaining when it doesn't, when it gets delayed. And all of those kinds of connections are really important. And as far as being connected to the author and knowing, that Maureen Johnson only eats fried chicken on Thursdays, all that kind of stuff, I think is really useful because it's like going to the farm and meeting the cow. It makes the milk a different thing. It makes you realize that these people are real and have their own little foibles and stuff. And I think anything that makes literature more human and more social is going to make it more appealing, especially to teenagers. I don't ever feel like it puts a lot of pressure on me. I'm sure there's people who, especially when you're starting out, there's probably some sense that if you don't blog every day, someone probably will tell you something like, if you don't blog every day, you'll disappear, or if you don't have a Twitter account, you're no one. But that's crazy because Suzanne Collins doesn't blog, doesn't have a Twitter account, and she has many books, many fans who've bought many books from her. It does take time, but so does touring, so does going to school visits. Lots of things that authors do aren't writing. It's just part of the business, and particularly the more successful you get, the more people will come and want you to do things that aren't writing. Yeah. Which is one of the ironies of our business. But it's not, it's not confined to the internet. Basically, I got fired. I was a sort of young exec at a publishing company, but I was in the educational wing doing textbooks and doing the conversions from textbooks to sort of software products. And I got fired. But it was one of those kind of nice firings where they give you money to go away. And I'd been working so hard for the years before then, I hadn't actually spent any of the money I'd made previously. So I wound up with a year's grace. If I ate a certain amount of ramen, I could make it for a year. And that's when I said, okay, I'm going to use that year to be either a writer or someone who's been rejected at least 10 times from major publishers and has written another novel. And but I already had a novel that I'd written in my off hours. So I worked on that for a month and worked on a query letter for a month. And sent a query letter, to the agents in Writers Marketplace. And one of them got back to me quite quickly. So I was represented, and then the novel I'd written, while I was working, actually was published. Luckily, I'd worked in publishing, like I said, and I knew a lot of people in the publishing world, and so that part was good. So when I got my YA idea, which was Midnighters, and that was just such a fundamentally YA idea because, staying up till midnight when you're 27 is not magical in any way whatsoever. So Midnighters would be stupid if you were 23. So I did know somebody at Alloy, or Parachute as it was called then, and wound up going to them and working with them a bit to develop the concept. In the middle of the third book. Okay. I've done with the first draft. So there's a whole set of things we have to do with the rewrites with me and my editor, and of course with these books there's the long trail of illustrations, because Keith Thompson, my illustrator, we collaborate on everything and things are bouncing back and forth, but a lot of his stuff is still in the sketch stage right now. So later, as it goes into the full-blown art stage, I'll look at it again and compare it to the text, and quite often I rewrite the text to match his illustrations, because he's a better engineer than me, better eye for detail in some cases, and I like them to match up very closely. So there's basically a lot of that to go, about half a year of that, and then we're going to do a fourth book in the trilogy, which is the art book, and it's color, large format, and that should be really fun. But that won't involve writing a whole novel. It's fake in-world stuff. So it's like the manual of aeronautics. You get to see the deck plans of the airships and cutaways of the Stormwalker and all that kind of stuff. In a funny way, it wasn't. I did it in a very strange way, though. I didn't sell it with a proposal per se. I went into Simon & Schuster and had their people all around it, around a big conference table just about the size of this one, about 12 of them, and I actually had flip charts with art by Keith Thompson, and did it. It was like a scene from Mad Men where you present something. And it was quite fun to actually do that. It was very something, it's something I used to do back in my software days. It's like, go into a boardroom full of exec dudes and try to blood them away with your prototype software. And it was, I had prototyped the book. We had done arts. I had blown these beautiful pieces of art by him up to, huge dimensions so you could see how great they were and how rich they were. And yeah, that's how I did it. But it was, the sell was hard, but the sell was pretty instantaneous. So. The first question is, I don't find it hard. I like writing books from multiple points of view. Darren and Alec are particularly good for that because they come from very different sides of the world. It's very Romeo and Juliet. She's a Darwinist. He's a clanker. She's used to these living machines. He's part of this culture that has metal machines. Also, he's an aristocrat and she's a commoner. So it's not very hard to distinguish their voices. They are very different people in the way they communicate and their expectations. The biggest problem with Alec is of course, that being the son of the Archduke Ferdinand, his parents were dead, so he has to be depressed for a while. And it always has this undercurrent of sadness, an undercurrent of feeling like the war is his family responsibility. And because of that, he is, I think, that dark presence inside him has made Darren turn into a much more fun, kind of daring-do sort of character, because I wanted her to be, having a blast. She has to be having fun, just because her counterpoint is a bit depressed. So I think I enjoy writing her more just for that reason. It wasn't started by me. I think it was E. Lockhart, Emily Jenkins, and Maureen Johnson and John Green, who were the original people who were writing together. And they all worked in this one coffee shop or a couple of coffee shops. And I started going. Robin Wasserman goes, Libba Bray. I mean, just and Holly Black and Cassie Clare when they're in town, and it's a total name dropping fest. And I remember once it got totally out of control. There was we basically took over this whole Cosey's in Manhattan, and because everyone was in town that weekend, and it was like, oh, we've heard about this writing, let's all go. And you went in, and like Met Cabot was there, and it was insane and ridiculous. And it's not as though it came out of any particular need, except that it's funner to be around those people than to be alone. Which is actually damning them with faint praise. They're actually really fun to be with. But writing is a very solitary profession. It can be really lonely. I'm lucky because I'm married to Justine, of course, Justine Labalestier, and we do write together a lot. Sometimes I have no idea what people are working on. I don't even know. It's not like I'm reading their novels or stuff. It's just little things like, what's another word for effulgent? That's that would be like once per hour. That's the amount of input, or the amount of interaction that has to do with our writing. 99% of it is just sitting there and hanging out and saying, "Have you seen this cat on YouTube that jumps into boxes?"